Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Recycled Content, a podcast of the Association of Plastic Recyclers, an international nonprofit and the only North American organization focused exclusively on improving recycling for plastics. I'm Kara Pochiro, and I'll be handing over hosting duties to Maite Quinn-Richards for a discussion about some of the topics and issues we'll be focusing on at the 2026 Plastics Recycling Conference, or PRC, being held in San Diego, February 23rd through the 25th. Maite is the president of Resource Recycling and has spent more than 30 years working across the recycling and sustainability industry, helping organizations grow and adapt as the sector continues to evolve. At Resource Recycling, she oversees industry-leading publications and events, including PRC. And this year, the Plastic Recycling Conference will also include the Textile Recovery Summit and the Resource Recycling Conference, so there's a lot more going on that we can talk about. So Maite, I will let you take it from here to tell us more about this year's conference and introduce our guests for today's episode.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kara. Totally appreciate it. Yes, today I'm joined by Michael Westerfield of DART and Nicole Janssen of Denton Plastics. Both of you serve on the APR Board and are deeply involved in shaping how plastic recycling actually works on the ground. Before we dive in, I'd love to have each of you briefly introduce yourselves, your companies, and the role you play in the recycling ecosystem. To Michael, let's start with you.
Hey, Michael Westerfield here, DART Container and Solo Cup. We manufacture food service packaging, and then we sell it to a lot of the big quick service restaurants that you're familiar with around the world.
Great. Thank you so much. And Nicole.
Hi, everyone. I'm president at Denton Plastics in Portland, Oregon. I've been in the plastic recycling industry for over 30 years. Our company works with customers to develop blends that are alternatives to virgin material. We're also PCR and PP and PE certified.
Thanks, Nicole. This year is a little different for us. We're holding the Resource Recycling Conference and the Textile Recovery Summit together with the Plastic Recycling Conference in San Diego this February, and that was a very intentional decision. Resource recycling has always been more geared towards policy, EPR, and the systems and funding mechanisms that support recycling, while PRC is deeply focused on materials, markets, and the technical realities of recycling. As EPR policies roll out and the expectations on recycling systems increase, those conversations can't happen in silos anymore. So bringing these events together felt like a natural fit. At the same time, plastics and textiles are increasingly intersecting in collection systems, sorting facilities, and end markets. The challenges around design, economics, and policies are shared, even if the materials are different. And bringing these events together reflects how the industry is actually operating today. I want to talk about these two things today: the current state of the plastic recycling industry and what people should be paying attention to at the Plastic Recycling Conference this year, especially in the context of bringing these events together. I want to talk to both of you before we get into the big topics, but what are you seeing right now from your seat in the industry? So I'll start with Nicole.
Well, Maite, I feel like people this year at the conference should really pay attention to two key issues that are happening right now in our industry. First being EPR legislation and the issue that plastic recycling continues to struggle against cheap virgin plastic that is very inexpensive due to oversupply. The conference is very unique this year because the chance to focus on plastic recycling, we also have the opportunity to work with policy and textiles at the same time. And I feel like if people can really dive into learning how we can complement each other and create potential pathways in the future to work closer together.
And Michael, from a brand manufacturing perspective, where do you see the biggest points of progress in plastic recycling, and where are the real pressure points right now?
Yeah, I think in terms of progress, technology is really evolving. It's helping MRFs produce better products, better streams, better feedstock. It's also helping reclaimers get to a cleaner, better end product. So those are positives. The pressure points are on exactly what Nicole hit on, and it's the price discrepancy between virgin and PCR. And I mean, it's been like this for years. When PCR costs, when virgin costs are high and PCR is more favorable, people go to PCR, and when it's not, they don't. And we're in that space right now because you can get virgin for pretty darn cheap. So people aren't fulfilling their commitments that they've made for PCR.
And Nicole, I mean, we talk about markets, but how can policy help that?
Policy can really help the situation with markets, mainly through the new legislation that seems to be happening across the country. We're up to 13 states, correct me if I'm wrong, 13 or 14 states now that are either introducing EPR or currently in the state I'm in, we've actually July 1st started our EPR program here. And I think that is going to have to be a huge focus in the future to create not only a supply, which we're tackling right now with the new policy, but we're going to have to go on the other side and create demand, which is, in my mind, PCR mandates in the future.
And Nicole, about feedstock, do you see consistency or variability now, or is that kind of maintaining consistency?
I always tell people that are new to recycling or really understanding the recycling process that it depends on what material you're talking about. Recycling in the past that's been very successful has using PET bottles, soda bottles, water that's very easy to collect, not many colors. You think about polyethylene and you have milk jugs that are also just a single stream of material. Then when you start collecting polyethylene mixed color, and probably the most difficult material is polypropylene because there's so many different types of melts and so many colors. And before we looked at shapes, and now we're actually having to go by material type. And to get the public to understand this education, it has to be so wide and the net is so much bigger to cast in order for people to understand the challenges.
Michael, what would brand owners be surprised to learn about what it actually takes to make recycled resin work at scale?
So I think brand owners would be surprised to know, what happens with the yield of these bales that we get. When you get a PET bale, it's typically all water bottles, clear, soda bottles. When you get polypropylene, you get all sorts of different materials in there. And you have to do a lot of work, and the yield suffers as a result of that based on what it is that you're trying to make from it. So I think they'd be surprised at how much goes into that and how much money. I mean, you paid for that material, you paid to sort it, and now you're going to have to pay to get rid of it. And getting rid of it, it might mean that you're selling it to another reclaimer. I mean, it might mean that it's actually just going out the back door. So, and there's a cost to that as well. So there's lots of costs throughout this whole piece. And I don't know that they're always aware of that.
I mean, these tensions around markets, material quality, and economics are themes that come up repeatedly at PRC in the agenda this year. One of the strongest through lines in PRC and resource recycling agenda is the question of markets and how they're created, how they're sustained, and how policy and EPR interact with those realities. Nicole, from your perspective, what makes a recycled resin market stable enough to invest in long term?
I think to make it stable is what we're trying to do right now, not only creating policy, but if people are going to invest, they're going to want to have long-term contracts attached to that. And right now, there is no consistency with the market for us. Most recyclers do not have the opportunity to do that. And I think in the future, when brands do understand sorting, processing, and they're willing to go in and make that commitment to have a long-term contract, it makes it more viable for recycling companies to be successful.
And Michael, from a brand standpoint, what do you need to see to confidently commit to using more recycled content?
We have conversations with suppliers regularly where we can get material. There's going to need to be commitments that are made on our part, long-term capital investments, things like that. And so naturally, we're looking at the people that buy the packaging that we make to see if they're willing to make commitments, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are deciding whether or not they want to use PCR. And so that's tough. The one solution, and one thing I'm kind of excited about right now, is New Jersey's mandatory minimum recycled content law is going to be coming into effect real quick here for food service packaging. So we're having real conversations. I mean, it's not a question now of whether or not they're going to buy PCR. They're going to buy it. It's whether or not they buy it from us. So, the conversation's changing. And I think that's really what you need to make people feel comfortable paying a premium for PCR, because they're on a level playing field with everybody else at that point.
Another major focus at PRC is design for recycling, not just in theory, but how design choices show up in real recycling systems. Michael, how do you think about design decisions when recyclability, product performance, and cost are all competing priorities?
It's not easy. We have to, we're making food service packaging. So of course we can't have our cups leak. And if they're too expensive, customers won't buy them. So those two things we have to work on, but sustainability is becoming very important with our customers as well. So we pursue APR's preferred design recognition to run products through there. We've also participated in APR's training, where we've had APR come to the DART campus and provide education for our product design engineers. It's been pretty amazing. I mean, the types of conversations that occurred during those meetings has been really exciting. People want to do the right thing. They just don't know what they don't know. And so engaging in training has been huge for us. And now it's just part of what we do when we're designing products. Sustainability is one of those boxes that we have to check.
That's amazing to hear. Nicole, when products are labeled recyclable but don't actually perform well in the recycling system, what does that mean for reclaimers and for the overall system costs?
Well, when products are labeled recyclable but don't perform, it can cause major issues like increased contamination, higher sorting and labor costs, equipment damage that can occur both at the MRF and the reclaimer, rejected loads that may be sent to landfills because they can't tackle it. And obviously that undermines the whole system. So for that reason, similar to what Michael was just talking about, it's important for brands to design for recyclability using tools like the APR design guide. And if we can create that as a standard practice and an industry standard, then having those tools will help us to create kind of a cleaner feed stream and less contamination in the long run.
Well, policy and APR are central themes for the whole recycling industry right now. And we see them increasingly shaping conversations for the whole industry. What do you think, both of you, policymakers, are most often misunderstanding and how recycling systems actually function? So, Nicole, I'll start with you.
Well, EPR policy in my state and Oregon, as I mentioned earlier, has started this year. And I feel like it's helped increase both the number of households being able to participate in recycling and just in general, the amount of recyclables collected across the state, because we have a unified state list that people can follow. We will also now see in the future what these new recycling laws in Oregon will help in the coming years to see how many percentages our recycling numbers can go up. Right now, our recycling numbers had been falling over the last 8-10 years. And so this new program that's created will help on getting the demand side of things. Now we need to work on the demand side because we have the supply with these new recycling laws. But the other flip side, like Michael also brought up earlier, is the PCR mandates that need to be a part of the next steps.
Yeah, Michael, what do you think about that as far as policymakers not understanding how the recycling system actually functions?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been told that supply is the issue, but supply really isn't the issue. If you're willing to pay for something, you can usually get it. The issue has been the cost of virgin versus PCR, versus post-consumer resin. It's been that way for forever. And so it'll be interesting to see, how these things evolve. But I think EPR could actually make matters worse. And we supported EPR. But I think if right now you've got more supply than demand, and now you're going to add more supply to the mix without the demand pull through, that's a problem. It's almost built to fail at that point. So we have to make sure that we are really eco-modulating PCR. We have to make sure that we are adopting laws like they did in New Jersey, where you're mandating minimum amount of recycled content. And we don't have to go big. We could go small. Start at 5% recycled content. It'd be amazing what that would do for the industry. It would create that whole pull through. It actually, New Jersey doesn't have an EPR law at this point in time. And I bet you it'll be more successful than the EPR states because it lets free markets take over. You have to use PCR. Now you can go shop and get it. Nicole Janssen, her company, can go ahead and make it for you. A MRF is going to go ahead and sort it for her because she needs it. It just lets everybody, all the free markets take over and creates that supply that you need. It makes so much more sense.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, everyone, right? It's 2026. So looking ahead, Michael, what's one of the trends or issues you're personally watching most closely over the next year?
How eco-modulation plays out for me. I think that's a really big one. I mean, it could really be a game changer if they really reward PCR that could be huge. That could make this whole thing work. If they don't, then we're going to have a lot of really good supply of material, but we're not going to have the demand to pull it through.
And Nicole, what would success look like for recyclers as we move into 2026?
Well, success, I don't think we can talk about enough between Michael and I talking about PCR mandates. Yes, I think that is something that this year needs to be a huge focus. And whether it's through the EPR or, like you said, Michael, maybe it's a different piece of legislation that needs to be passed in a state. That's really important. And I'm thinking this year, now that we're going to have a full year under our belt in July, there's a lot of changes that are happening with hopefully cleaning up our feed streams through the collection process with these new laws here in Oregon. Since we're first, I think a lot of states are looking to Oregon for some guidance. So that's kind of the last piece, is I feel like we need to make sure we're having conversations between the states, because you can't be right next to another state and have two different of laws. You've got to have some kind of synergy between the states and these EPR laws.
Great point. To bring us back to where we started, this year we're intentionally bringing together PRC, Resource Recycling, and Textile Recovery Summit. From both of your perspectives as APR board members, why does it make sense to have policy, EPR, market development, and technical recycling conversations happening together rather than separately?
One informs the other. You're not going to make good decisions unless your eyes are wide open and you understand the realities of everything. And that's what's so great about this conference. It's going to touch on so many different points.
And I'll add to that by saying, when you really think about who's going to be in the room, when you've got policy people there, you've got different commodities, and adding textiles this year, they have a very difficult feed stream they are trying to recycle. Having us all at the table to be able to talk to each other is so important. Everyone needs to play a part in this for us to all be successful.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Michael, Nicole, thank you guys both so much for joining us today. These are exactly the kind of grounded, honest conversations the industry needs as recycling systems, policy, and markets continue to evolve. I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations in San Diego at the Plastics Recycling Conference in February, and excited to see both of you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kara.
Yeah, this was a great conversation, kind of a sneak peek into what we'll be hearing more about at PRC, as well as Resource Recycling and the Textile Recovery Summit. It's interesting to get the perspective from a recycler and a brand. And as you mentioned, we'll have all different people at the table at the conference, lots of diverse panelists. So again, thanks so much to Maite for hosting, and thanks to Nicole and Michael for joining us today. And thanks to everyone for listening. We do want to hear from you. Feel free to contact APR at info@Plastics Recycling for more information. You can find recycled content wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and review. And for more information, visit the APR website at plasticsrecycling.org. Check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X at APR Recycles.
This podcast was recorded in the studios of
Policy Resolution Group, Washington, D.C.